Hello, welcome everybody. I'm very excited to introduce to you. This is the first official episode. You may have seen previously, and if you haven't, please sure to check it out on the Reflect Media YouTube page or the Brondy House website. It will be up on there soon. A Kwanzaa series, mini series. But now I'm excited to announce that we have Brondy House every week giving us some nuggets. I want to welcome ShaRhonda and Brian. Thank you, ShaRhonda and Brian, for coming on board and doing a show with us and collaborating with us.
Oh my gosh, we're so excited.
Yeah, thank you.
February is a big month for us.
Right.
Yeah. So we decided to start this first week of February. I'm sure everybody knows that February is Black History Month, and so I know that's a very important month to you, ShaRhonda. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the intention behind this first 4 weeks, this Black History Month, this series you're going to be doing?
So for the past couple of years, Brian and I have been working really hard on a curriculum and training and doing education to start our organization, Brondy House, where we do anti-racist work some of the time. But the other really big part of what we do is teach Black history to children, have activities, and we do workshops for educators and for schools. So Black History Month is important for us because there's so much false information out there. And there's so many Black people who we don't know our history, right? But then also there's this distorted world view that's given in schools about who Black people are and where we come from. And we have a joyous, wonderful history that is long, and that's what we're excited to share. Just little tidbits on about Black history, the length, the width, the depth, and all of that of Black history.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're doing is we're not trying to, re-educate necessarily. It's just that things are sometimes incomplete. Or sometimes incorrect. And so what we're trying to do is just provide supplements to, whether it be students in school or adult educators or adults who want to learn, just to say, you already know part of the story, but there's so much more after you, kind of scratch the surface there.
I love that. I love that. I'm so excited I'm gonna be editing this, but I'm excited to watch week to week and learn from the two of you. And to be clear, you also have, this is the Brondy House show, but you have a Brondy House organization as well. So can you tell people a little bit about that?
Sure. So right now we do consulting and trainings on how to properly teach Black History Month, which we're going to talk about some of the aspects that people tend to get wrong when talking about Black history. We do awareness on ancient African civilization. So what was West Africa like pre-colonialism? And the one that we love the most, we called it Black School, but it's now Brondy House Academy. Right. I don't know if you want to talk about.
Oh yeah, we focus, if you will, on I guess what people will kind of call antiquity in a lot of areas, where if we're going back to 3500 BC and talking about Nile Valley and talking about that as far as Black history, most people usually think Black history is, Jackie Robinson, Arthur Ashe, Martin Luther King Jr., and Harriet Tubman. And they're like, okay, it's pretty much, wrapping it up in a nice, neat package, but it's so much longer and grander than that. And so what we try and do and give people the full breadth of Black history and a better understanding of how they should see themselves as a part of history.
And that was Carter G. Woodson, who we're going to talk more about, who's the founder of Black History Month. That was his reason for doing this, is that in order for Black people to succeed, they need to know that they have succeeded before, right? That there's this propaganda war saying that Black people were savage, Black people were in Africa naked and cannibals, and that we had no history until Europeans came. And although they don't say that directly, a lot of times what our children get in schools are remnants of that, or an omission of Africa. Again, then saying to Black kids, you don't have a history, right?
Rome, right, like life started at slavery.
Yeah, exactly. And we came here. And so it is important for us to do this, not just because it's an academic thing, but it's a revolutionary thing. It's a liberatory thing. You get freedom when you know who you are and where you come from. And so that's why we take the teaching and sharing of Black history so important. I mean, so seriously, because it's an important part of our liberation.
I love it. And if parents want to sign their kids up for Brownie House Academy, they can find you at
www.brondi, BRONDI house, HOUSE, all one word, .org. And I'll put a link in. And so, yeah, like I said, we're available. We go to a couple of schools. We've done classrooms with younger kids. We've done a couple of workshops with high school kids. Just anytime there's an opportunity to get us in front of kids, especially Black kids, we love to come out and talk about this information that's missing.
I love it. I love it. All right. Well, I'm going to step out now and let y'all take over. Now we're going to see the official first episode. This was just a little get to know you intro. Now I'm going to hand it over to the two of you. We're going to listen in about Black History Month and Carter G. Woodson. Have fun, y'all.
All right. Thanks. All right. So welcome. February 1st, 2021, Black History Month. We wanted to start by talking about the founder of Black History Month, and his name was Carter G. Woodson. He was born in 1875. He got a master's degree from the University of Chicago, and he got a PhD from Harvard University. He was the second Black person to do that. The first one was W.B. Du Bois. But he really spent his entire life dedicated to finding the academic studies and proof of Black people's civilization and our roles in society.
Right. One of the biggest points that Carter G. Woodson and others after him have always wanted to point out was the importance of Black people seeing themselves as a part of history, not as passive, static individuals who had nothing to offer, but dynamic individuals who had always been a part of history, who had given their own, given rise to their own civilizations and organizations. And once people found that out, he felt that that would be a part of Black liberation, Black equality, or what even people speak of today is equity, that would kind of be that foundation.
So in his life, he traveled, he spoke many languages. He was the first to outline Africa, pre-African civilizations, the Nile Valley, West Africa. I had a couple of books I just wanted to show as prompts.
Yeah, we got props.
We got props, right? Yeah. So that's one, that's the Negro Journal, but this is, right?
About that.
And so this is volume 12 of 23 of Carter G. Woodson's Journal of Negro History. So he was like for real about going through all parts of Black history, anything that we've done, anything in writing throughout the diaspora, and putting it down so that future generations, us, will know our history. And this is important to note, because he gave his life for it. He didn't get married, right? He was like, my world is Black history. So it was his house, it was his everything. And he did it because he understood that history is political. And if we don't have it, then we can't go forward.
Very much so. You know, I think that sometimes people think of history as a list of names and dates. However, when you think about how history is taught, what is history? History is an explanation. History is basically saying, this is how we came to be. This is how we got here. So if I were to give an example and I were to say, if someone were asking ShaRhonda, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your history. You know, if she says, well, I met Brian in 2005. We started dating. We got married. We had kids, etc. People say, well, yeah, that is a part of your story. That's the part of your story where you're connected to someone else who might be a big part of your life, but that's not your history. That's a part of your story. And that's kind of what happens to our history. People say, well, let's talk about Black history. And they say, well, people were slaves. And it's like, wait, no, you're talking about a relationship that they had as a part of their history. And that is a part of it. But if you want to talk about the beginning, you'd say, ShaRhonda, tell me your history. And she'd say, well, I started here. I was born in Chicago. And so if we're going to talk about history and we're talking about how did we get here, and that's what history tells you. So if you open up a history book, it'll say, okay, well, there's Greece, and then there's Rome, and then there's England, and then there's the United States. That's history. Why? Because they're saying, well, that's how we got here. And as Americans, everyone says, oh yeah, that makes sense. And so anyone else who's connected in history, they might say, well, okay, let's talk about China. They'll say, well, Marco Polo got to China in, the 1200s. And they say, well, China existed before that. Well, yes, but we're trying to explain our connection. So that's why that happened. And so what we have to do is we have to say, well, if we're talking about Black history, we have to go back to the beginning. And so we often will say, well, if we're going to go back to the beginning, we did not begin in slavery. We began in basically, in Africa, in the Nile River Valley. And so if you take it from there and then you say, well, this is our history, then it's less surprising when people say, well, Black people can accomplish great things. Black people can be educated. Black people can build their own systems. And it's not that, oh, well, one day we can do it. It's like, no, we've already done it. So it is possible. It's not that we're trying to bridge some kind of achievement gap between Black and white or whatever. We're just trying to get back to our former greatness. So it's not about, well, can we get the unemployment rate this much movement, 5-6%, or can we get this in education? Can we get this in healthcare? It's like, well, we've already built great things. And so once you see your history, then you have a better understanding of, oh, okay, we're not starting from scratch here. This isn't a situation where we're at the bottom and trying to get up. We're just trying to say, yeah, we have been enslaved people at one point, but before that, we had universities, we had hospitals, we had civilizations.
We had calendars. And so one of the most important lessons that we, the way that we explain this to young people and also to adults is with a 12-inch ruler. Can you, should I use the purple one?
Yeah, I think it's a little bigger, so.
Okay. Oh. Okay.
Alrighty.
So this is a 12-inch ruler. And what you'll see is, what we do is say, each inch represents 500 years, right? And so we start Black history here, right? And this is, we'll say 3500 BC. And this is in the Nile River Valley when the two kingdoms, Upper and Lower Egypt, united, right? We already had hieroglyphs writing. We had classes. We had domestication of animals. We had different civilizations that realized they needed to unite in 3500. So we probably could go back further, but we're just going to start at right here, right? And we go for 500 years. If we were going every 500 years, in between the 5 and the 6 is when Assyrians came into the Nile Valley, right? So for most of half of the ruler, this was just all African. Right about 7 is when Greece came in, Alexander the Great and Persians. Right after 7 was Rome took over Egypt. And then a little bit after that, Arabs came in, 600 AD. And so why am I saying this? It's because we need to know that when we look at these pyramids and we look at hieroglyphs and we look at the majesty of Egypt and the Nile Valley and of all civilizations, it's most strong in Africa. There's most proof of ancient history in Africa. And there were no other people there until about 6, right? So for half of this ruler, we were all sufficient, and we had thriving cultures and civilizations in the Nile Valley. And then the other part that we go to is we tell students to look from 6 to about 9.5. And that's when we had West African civilizations. So we had,
yeah, you're talking about Ghana, you're talking about Mali, you're talking about the Songhai Empire, you're talking about Benin, and empires that during that time, you're talking about the Dark Ages in Europe. You're talking about these being the most powerful nations on the planet that often don't really kind of get talked about. Right?
Yeah, and so ancient Africa, like while Europe was in the dark ages, sorry, in Mali, we had Timbuktu, we had the university, we had the richest person still in history by far. I know the Amazon guy's trying to catch up. What is he, 200 billion
Yeah, I think
now?
Jeff Bezos is probably at 200 million.
But Mansa Musa in Mali was at 400 billion, just conservatively. And so we had universities, we had housing, we had human rights, we didn't have poverty, we had all of these things. And this is before the Portuguese arrived, right? In about the 1400s in Africa. So we then say, okay, so 0 to about 6, we're in the Nile Valley. 6 to about 10, we have West African cultures, and we're interacting and surviving and having these thriving cultures. And then at about 10 to 11, that little 1 inch, 500-year period is Black history enslaved in the Americas, right? So when we're talking about Black history, we need to talk about the whole ruler instead of talking about this 1 inch in our history, right? This one small part of who we are, because who we are is so much grander and so much longer and so much richer than just us being enslaved. And yes, we come from some of the strongest, most resilient people who, out of this cruel process of enslavement, were able to do wonderful things in science and in math and in the arts and to succeed. But that's still just a part of who we are, right? Black history is the entire ruler, right? We have the whole span of it. And so when you're talking to students or when you're engaging in Black History Month, we think that it's important that you make sure that you talk about the totality of history and that Black kids know that this is a small part of who we are. It is not our entire story. Like we said, Carter G. Woodson, the father of Black History Week, he started something called the Negro History Bulletin, and he would send out these letters advocating to educators across the world to start the Black History Week. And he gave this explanation of why it's so important. And I think that we need to listen to his words because they're still so poignant in 2021. And this was written in 1920. So we're going to hear Carter G. Woodson, and he said, start now Negro History Month year in order to have a Negro History Week.
With such a record, it is evident that the world needs to begin to study the Negro and to learn the whole truth. For centuries, we have been the victims of propaganda, and as long as the truth is denied a hearing, there will always be strife among the members of the human family. And disorder, like the present in which the world now finds itself, will always be possible. Nothing can do more to remove this bias from the public mind than the study of the Negro. It will disillusion millions of biased people to learn that they take themselves too seriously, and that the Negro whom they despise has accomplished more along certain lines than they themselves have achieved. You shall know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Dr. Carter G. Woodson, the Negro History Bulletin.
Yeah, I get chills every time I read his work. And we're going to include just a picture, but I actually have one of the original flyers that they sent out to Black colleges and schools at the time, written by Carter G. Woodson, encouraging people to do Black History Month and laying out why it was important and what it should look like. So yeah, happy Black History Month. We know it is the shortest part of the year, shortest month of the year, but there's so much history, and we look forward to sharing different tidbits with you throughout the week. And also, like, again, if you want us to help with consultation on curriculum or coming into the class or talking about Nile Valley or Mali or Mansa Musa, we're available to do that too.
Exactly. And so just wrapping up, obviously this is the beginning of what was Negro History Week. And it was always Carter G. Woodson's dream that this would be something that, yes, it turned into a month, but this was supposed to be kind of integrated into history. It wasn't supposed to be like, okay, and now we have a month and in February we'll talk about this. He really wanted this to be a situation where he kind of put the information out there, planted that seed, and the legacy of that would be a situation where it is fully integrated into all societies around the world and that everyone knows Black history. And so we are working toward that end, trying to complete that legacy.
And our plea to educators and to people that are celebrating this is not to focus on this, our last 500 years as the sole representation of Black History Month. Yes, it's great to have Jackie Robinson be the first Black baseball player, but that isn't a conquest for the race of Black people. That is when he broke through racial segregation, right? This is when white people accepted him. Or Misty Copeland as the first Black ballerina. This is American history, right? This isn't our race inventing, creating, sustaining systems that that have influenced the world over, right? So just, we hope that you get excited as we are about Black History Month, and make sure to share the length and all of the wonderful things that Black people have done throughout time. Thank you.
Till next time.